You ever do something in the heat of the moment, and later, when you've cooled down, you think, what was I thinking? Of course, we all have. Well, today we're jumping into Chapter 6 of Predictably Irrational to really get to the bottom of that feeling. It's all about this epic battle happening inside our heads between our cool, rational self and our hot, emotional self.
So, let's just start with a really big question. Think about it for a second. Are you one consistent person? Or does it sometimes feel like there are two different people living in your head, especially when you get really worked up?
The book uses this perfect analogy to explain it, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You've got your cool self, who is basically Dr. Jekyll. That's the you that plans for the future, eats healthy, and is generally pretty reasonable. But then you've got your hot self, Mr. Hyde. And this guy is all about the here and now. He's impulsive, emotional, and doesn't really care about consequences. And here's the scary part. Dr. Jekyll, your rational self, has almost no idea what Mr. Hyde is truly capable of.
So to really prove this point, the author Dan Ariely and his colleague George Lowenstein set up this absolutely fascinating and maybe a little controversial experiment at Berkeley. They wanted to put this idea to the test. Do we actually know what we'll do when our hot self takes over?
The question they were asking was actually pretty simple, but it's also really deep. How well does the cool, calm version of you really know the aroused, in the heat of the moment you? Can you accurately predict what you'll want or what lines you'll cross when you're in a completely different state of mind?
The setup itself was kind of genius. They got a bunch of male college students and had them answer a whole list of questions about their sexual preferences and their moral boundaries. First, they answered everything in a totally normal, calm, or cold state. But then, they had to answer the exact same questions again, only this time while they were in a sexually aroused or hot state. And the difference between those two sets of answers, well, that's where things get really interesting.
And the results were, as the author says, overwhelmingly clear, frighteningly clear. It turns out that the calm Dr. Jekyll, well, he didn't have a clue what the aroused Mr. Hyde was into. Not even close.
Okay, so check this out. When the participants were in that hot state, their interest in all sorts of unusual sexual activities just skyrocketed. We're talking about things they dismissed in their cold state. On average, their interest jumped by 72%. That is a massive shift.
But here's where it starts to get a little more, well, concerning. Their willingness to do morally shady things to get sex, like lying or getting someone drunk, it more than doubled, a 136% increase. Suddenly, those firm moral lines they thought they had, they got real blurry, real fast.
And then there's this number. This one is honestly just jaw-dropping. In their cold state, the idea of slipping a woman a drug to have sex was, of course, abhorrent. But in their hot state, the willingness to even consider it shot up by 420%. It went from being unthinkable to thinkable.
This quote from the book just sums it all up perfectly. All the rational stuff, thinking about prevention, protection, consequences, morality, it all just vanished. It was completely off the radar. The students simply could not imagine how much that state of passion would completely change who they were.
So what in the world is going on here? Why are we so bad at predicting what our other self will do? It all comes down to a really important psychological idea that the book calls the hot-cold gap.
It's called the hot-cold empathy gap. And what that basically means is that when we're in a cold state, calm and rational, we are terrible at understanding how powerful a hot state will be. Whether that hot state is arousal or extreme anger or even intense hunger, we just can't imagine its pull. It's like we lack empathy for our future self.
So here's the bottom line. We all walk around as Dr. Jekyll, right? We think we're in the driver's seat, that we know ourselves inside and out. But we all have a Mr. Hyde inside us, and we consistently and dramatically underestimate his power when he decides to grab the wheel.
Okay, so this all sounds pretty bleak, I know, but the great thing about understanding this weakness is that it actually gives us a roadmap. If we know this gap exists, we can start building bridges over it. We can create strategies to protect ourselves from ourselves.
And the master strategy is actually pretty simple. Don't trust your willpower in the heat of the moment. It's just not reliable. Instead, you need to use your calm, rational Dr. Jekyll to set up rules and build guardrails for your future emotional Mr. Hyde, because he just can't be trusted to make good choices.
Let's go back to the safe sex example. This means two things. First, it's way easier to just avoid the temptation in the first place. Campaigns like Just Say No often fail because they expect your rational brain to be in charge of the peak of passion, which, as we've seen, is not going to happen. So a smarter move is to not get into that situation to begin with. The second strategy is to prepare for yes.
Your calm Dr. Jekyll self has to assume that your aroused Mr. Hyde self might say yes and should make sure protection is already there, ready to go. You remove that one extra barrier to making a safer choice.
And this logic applies to everything, not just sex. Think about teen drivers. Don't just lecture them about speeding. Use tech that automatically texts you if they go over the speed limit. Or what about big life decisions, like deciding on pain medication for childbirth? The author's wife actually tried to simulate the hot state by sticking her hand in a bucket of ice water to get just a tiny glimpse of the pain she'd feel later. And probably the most useful one for all of us. When you get that email that makes your blood boil, let Dr. Jekyll write the angry reply, but make him wait 24 hours before Mr. Hyde is allowed anywhere near the send button.
So, I'll leave you with this to think about. If you know you can't fully trust your hot self, your inner Mr. Hyde, what rules, what systems can you, your cold self, put in place right now to protect you from your own worst impulses later on?